Kia ora. My name's Callum Ross. I'm Chief Executive for Hawke's Bay Fruit Growers. I'm also the Chairman of the Horticulture Advisory Group, so 3 months in the role. So if I haven't met you, I'd love to meet you and sign you up as one of our members, so don't leave the building if you're not a HBFA member.
We can't afford it.
You can't afford it? Okay. So just cover some H&S. If there's emergency, please exit the rear door. There's also exits here as well. So yeah, if you could do that, that'd be great. Please turn off your cell phones. We don't want any phone calls in the middle of this conversation. So just giving you an overview, the goal of this meeting is to provide a platform for growers and for you to ask questions and discuss how we can navigate the proposed changes. And I just want to reinforce the submissions will be due this Wednesday. So Leanne will be at the back, and if you'd like to do that tonight, we can help you with that. I'd also like to just bring, so Bryden will chair, and I'll bring him in now to introduce some of the speakers.
Hey, welcome growers coming out on a Monday night. So we wanted to put this meeting together. As you know, rate increases are going from 20% to 200% plus. It's significant. I've checked some of my orchards and I'm like 45, 50% increase, which is just huge. So really, you know, these are proposals for significant rate increases at a time where many of us are still picking up the pieces after the floods. So how and why have they come to these decisions and why are these increases so high, considering that a lot of these decisions were made before the cyclone? So, you know, we can only assume these greater cost increases to come. Why has the regional council spending gone up so much in the last 10 years? And we've got some speakers here that'll talk about that, and you'll be blown away with how much that spending has gone up in the last 10 years. So the key question tonight really is, are the council managing taxpayers' money prudently? And we need to know that. Unfortunately, no one from the operational side of the council would come here to speak tonight. So we have some councillors that are going to share. And we have some different speakers tonight. We've got Rick Barker's going to speak. We have a PowerPoint presentation that the councillors that are here tonight will share and presenting that. John Bostock's going to share on behalf of the growers. Jeff Van Beck is going to share. And we also have Leanne Roberts from Horticulture New Zealand, who's just going to give a high-level brief on the water space and what's going on there. And Hugh Ritchie will touch on that as well. But the key thing is to get some information, ask some questions. At the end of each speaker, we'll have a time for questions, and there's something's really pending, you want to put your hand up and ask during the presentation. Wait till the end of each speaker, we'll have some question time. But the key thing is we need to get submissions into the council on the website by Wednesday end. And at the end of the meeting, Leanne here with her hand up will be at the back of the room with her computer open, and she will show you how to go through that if you need some help. Is that clear? Yep. Okay, so can we welcome up Rick Barker?
Well, thank you very much. I was invited to say a few words because someone thought I might know something about the Regional Council and have some opinions, and I was asked if I would provide my opinion. Well, I always like to be free and frank, and so I'll let people know what I think. The first thing that surprised me about the Regional Council was the change of its rating base. We had been through this previously as a council and decided against it. The reason we decided against it was because we couldn't come up with a compelling reason why the change in base was more favourable. For every winner, there was a loser. And all we're going to do is shift things around a bit. And the only argument that was compelling wasn't compelling, strong argument was, well, everybody else does it. To which I said to the chief executive at the time, well, let's just think of it as lemmings. The head lemming's gone over the cliff and everyone else has followed. We're at the back. Do we run over the cliff just because everybody else has gone over the cliff? And I said, I don't think that's a good policy position at all. James uncharacteristically had no particular answer to that. The other thing I feel about the change in rating base is that regional council must have known that there was going to be a substantial rate increase come along. So with the change in rating base, some are going to go up and some are going to go down. And then with this some up, some down, bang on top of that, a large rate increase. So the people who went up are going to go up twice. The people who went down were going to be indemnified against it. The group who I think is really interesting to look at are foresters. Now, foresters have done pretty well out of this. These are the people whose slash has gone down creeks and rivers, jammed culverts, blown roads, blown railways, etc. More in Gisborne than us. But foresters are going to be better off under this new regime that's been put in place. But interestingly, the regional council has also decided to make a change to its possum control. Before, it was nearly all just the rural people who had to pay for possums, you know, with the farmers or whatever. But now it's going to be spread over every ratepayer. So foresters are going to get a decrease in the rate for possums, a decrease in the rates full stop, and I just wonder, what's the largesse? Why is this all being heaped on the foresters? The other thing that annoys me a little bit about the current rate increase is that when you read the literature that's put out, it talks about 250 million billed. Now, I look at these things not as an informed person, but as an ordinary person on a bus, the number 9 bus from Napier to Hastings, gets the paper and has a look at it, and sees 250 million. Well, they would be of the opinion that that was what the regional council was going to have out of rates. There was no hint in any of the literature that 204 million of that comes from the government, 203 million from the government and 47 for the council. Now, that I would have thought would have been fundamental for any disclosure. You people are involved in business. If you put out a proposal that didn't disclose where your funding was coming from that, you would be in hot water immediately. But hey, this is politics. So I was a bit frustrated by that. The other thing that frustrates me is that with this proposal about rebuilding, I don't know about anybody here, but I have got no particular sight on what's going to happen with the stop banks. Are they going to go up? They're going to go out. What are we going to do with this money? This is vital to us because, let's be clear, the Heritonga Plains are a creation of people. They're not natural. We have put stop banks in, changed the rivers, pumped and all the rest of it. This is being created by people and we have to protect them. If we don't, they're gone. So what is the plan? And I can't see it. I can't even see yet there is a plan to develop a plan. There must be something going on in there, but Sheriff must know, I don't know. But I thought we'd all have known because I'm not sure that I don't see yet how the council is engaged with us about what the cost of this is going to be and what we're going to get out of it, the level of protection. This is a very important question and I think there should be a serious public debate about that. But as for cost, the regional council blurts, trumpets that 250 million is the biggest spend in Hawke's Bay ever. Well, if that's true, if you go and develop how much it costs to put the stop banks in the first time and put it into today's terms, probably well in excess of 250. The wind farm at the top of the hill up there is 400 million. So why are they telling us it's the biggest build of all when the facts don't stack up? So I just think there's been, I think, a poor process. The part that I'm frustrated about is a change of the rating base, so those who are going up in rates are going to have another thing dumped on top of them. And I just wonder, to me personally, about the morality of that. Surely, if everybody knew there was going to be a huge rate increase, we'd have shared it evenly across everybody. Why would we give some group an advantage over another? It's just not the way we do it. That's my view. I feel that for some, it's going to be a huge burden, and for others, they're going to get it pretty light. And I don't know that the Regional Council has thought about the ethics of that as carefully as I think they should have.
Do we have any questions for Rick? Got off lightly. Oh, yeah.
No, I've got one. Got to have one.
Oh, good.
So, Rick, you've been for a long time in local politics.
Yep.
So we as a council, it wasn't unanimous. There are 3 councillors here tonight that actually voted against the change from land value to capital value.
Good on them.
So what do you think the process could be if through submissions it actually became really clear that the ratepayers who are affected by it are not in favour of it and actually asking us to at least come up with a solution or reverse it. Is there such a thing in place that we could change this?
Of course. People change their mind all the time. We all make mistakes. It's a courageous person says we made a mistake and we can change it. And if the regional council said, well, there's so much unease out here about this, we want to start from scratch again, I think the public here would say, yeehaw, thank you. Very impressed with that. I think there would be great support for that, my view. It's a very humbling thing to make a mistake. And I admit that I make mistakes all the time. I'm very happy that I've got other people to tell me that and guide me with that, so it's good. But you just have to say, well, front up and do it again. That's, I think you should do. Exactly, Sheriff.
It's good to look at this bigger picture. In here, we've got three significant cost components, which is flood protection, coastal hazards and public transport. It'd be good to understand in context with what we're dealing with right now, just what those proposed changes or increases might be, because they're a massive part of, I would suggest, the bigger picture.
Well, there is that, but there's also another thing there, is the interest that the council's carrying in terms of its debt. Now, I'm going to put my hand up, Sheriff, and say I made a mistake. We were on the council, we had COVID come around the corner, and we all thought this is going to be disastrous. No one knew what we're in for. And the regional council at the time had sold its shares off in the port and had a very healthy balance sheet. So the chair and I and a number of others, and Chairman Rex will really accept this, decided that we should use the balance sheet of the regional council to help buffer the costs for ordinary people. And so we had no rate increase. In the end, it was unnecessary. So we've left the council with a debt. What Rex and I think should happen is that the council should take some of the cash they got from the sale of the port shares, 8 million is about all that's required, and pay down the debt and free up a lot of other things. Now, there's an argument within the council that this is intergenerational money and should be saved and used in the future. My view is these funds are for a rainy day. And we did have a rainy day with Gabrielle, a really rainy day. If we're ever going to spend some of the resources, this is a good time to do it. Free up some cash and do the right thing.
Look, I'll stick up my hand. I was one of the ones that did vote for the change to the rating base, and for the benefit of the people in the room, I did that because I felt the proposed system was fair. And if I use myself as an example, I'm like a small version of you guys in terms of capital value. So I'm in a place, capital value of 2.6, and previously I was paying $480 a month, a year in rates, and I think that's way too light for someone like me in a place like that. And so now I pay $1,400 a year, and of course it's a sample of one, but to me that's a fair amount to be paying. That has rectified a previous low number that I was paying. So I'll just make that point. The other one, which is a bit unintended, is that a big chunk of the rate increase, especially I had a look at some addresses around here, actually is transport. And whilst the transport net was spread further, an unintended consequence of it has been a much bigger chunk of the rate increase is transport than was intended. So, you know, I don't know if any of us anticipated that, but I think if you look at your pie charts, if you go on the calculator, a big chunk of it's transport, and that's something that's happened that shouldn't have happened.
Well, I've got two answers to that. Firstly, I did a master's degree in public policy, and one of the number one rules is you should never make public policy on the basis of a single example. You should make it on the basis of it. And I have to say to you also, Jock, look, before you set the rate, they provide you with spreadsheets of all of it, and it goes through every detail. And I'm stunned to hear you say it came to you as a surprise to learn how far the transport rates spread. I just have to say to you, you can't have read your papers.
No, I don't mean the spread, I mean the extent of it.
The extent of it, however you want to, you can't have read your papers. It was all, should have been all there, plump, plain and clear. Otherwise, the council staff have deceived you. And if they've deceived you, someone needs firing. Sorry.
Just one question, as a ratepayer,
Yep,
so we're a park right.
yep.
We got a rates notice, okay, we don't have to pay for another year, or until they gave us 2 years grace, but it's still based on pre-Gabriel capital value.
Right.
Is there going to be a revaluation or a reconsolidation? The house, which has been demolished, so, you know, there's a lot of, has been removed, and there's about 3 hectares of it is bare land.
That might be a question for
Yeah.
these guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
I can answer that one. So when we had the debate, we had a very experienced valuer speak against the change. And the reason was exactly what you now say. So capital value on horticultural land it fluctuates depending on the ability to how the industry goes, how much money you can make. In your case, you got flooded. And he said, if you actually go from land value to capital value, the way revaluation happens in Hawke's Bay in New Zealand is so slow that you will catch like yourself, you'll be caught out, and it will take maybe 3 to 4 years until your next cycle of revaluation comes through, that they all of a sudden realise that you have no house, no trees left on that block, and they'll reduce your value. But in the meantime, you'll be paying through the nose in rates. And in land value, you will never have that. And that's why this man took its time to actually come and speak to us and actually talk about why he was opposed. But unfortunately, and I've publicly apologised to all the ratepayers in Hawke's Bay, we as councillors didn't listen. 547 people submitted. 90% of them were against the change, but our council said, no, we know better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, kia ora. Zan Harding, Regional Councillor. We seem to have the same jackets on tonight. Look, just to add some practical advice around the valuations. Hastings District Council, most of you will be Hastings District Council ratepayers, was most of the way through its rates, its triennial rates resetting when the cyclone came along. There was a special bit of legislation, one of a number of, they call it swirler, severe weather event acts, that was passed subsequent to that to essentially allow QV not to revalue properties post-cyclone. So what that does is leave those people whose either your property values have gone down significantly as a result of the repricing in the hort sector, or specifically because your assets have been destroyed, that leaves you with still your old CV, which is probably significantly higher than where you feel it should be. Now, according to the Hastings District Council website, there is a process available still for you to evidence that you have lost the structures. So it would seem to apply to horticultural structures and buildings. So any kind of structures on the property, there would appear to be a process. I've asked our CE for information on this. It hasn't come to us yet, but we're expecting that there may be a process where you can actually get your valuation adjusted, which will flow through to that capital value that you're now being charged rates on. And we hope to provide more information on that shortly.
Thanks, Sam. So like I said, there's no one from the operational side of the council here, but we've got 4 councillors here. 3 of them are going to share. 2 of them are going to share, taking us through the PowerPoint. Zane first.
There are actually 6 slides, and we're going to talk to maybe 2 or 3 of them. The one before this is the slide that says this is a 3-year long-term plan. 3 years is not long-term. Normally, there would be a fully audited plan done every 3 years that goes out 10. Another one of those acts, those post-cyclone acts of Parliament says, that's swirler, we don't have to do that. And we simply didn't, our team of staff didn't have the capacity to do that. So this is an unaudited 3-year plan. It deliberately doesn't. It's a recovery-focused plan. It deliberately doesn't try to look out beyond the 3 years. And just in terms of that $250 million rebuild, which is the kind of centrepiece of what's going on in terms of activity over the next 3 years, that is actually programmed to go over 3.5 years, essentially. So it's a very ambitious timeframe for those flood reconstructions, or flood protection system reconstructions for those areas that were categorised. And basically, by the time we get to the 2 years through this plan, we'll be looking at what comes next, and there'll be a whole lot of what comes next. Anyway, in terms of understanding, so if we go on to the next slide, this, I think, is the best kind of shortcut to understanding the big drivers in the numbers. And, oh, we'll go over here. So this is where we were. This is where we are. These were savings, so there's about $5.6 million of savings that they've activated. Well, this is not a saving. This $1 million is going to borrowing rather than so that's borrowing rather than expenses. So in terms of the short term, anyway, 5.6 down, 13.6 up. Now, if you look at those, one of those, Rick, and good on you, Rick, for sticking your hand up in terms of those deferred rate increases. So there's a chunk. So what the current councillors have done is try and have a clean up of the books. And one of those is COVID is getting away from spending, is deferring operational expenses, or continuing to grow the business essentially, but doing it out of borrowing. So we've unwound that. There was about $4 million of stuff that goes up that we can't do anything about. There was a rejigging of investment income, so there were pre-cyclone some pretty optimistic, in hindsight optimistic assumptions about our return on our investment portfolio. We've pulled that all in, and also behind that we've actually completely rejigged our relationship with our investment company, and we're trying to put that on a footing where it will be an investment powerhouse for us, and modelled on what goes on in Tauranga. The idea that if it can get investment returns above its borrowing cost, which is not the same as your borrowing cost, then that is a reduction to rates. And the assumption in there, and the default position in the LTP, is that we will not, this is not the rainy day that we sell long-term assets to fund a gap. And I really welcome people's opinions on that. The one or two people in the room have already given us their opinions, and I'm sure they'll give us those opinions again. In my view, if we were to do that, if we were to get the year one rates built down by selling assets, we would have to be looking in those out years to find out how we can reduce operational costs. You can't keep on spending capital on operations. And 1.4 million for public transport costs. Now, when you look at the effect on you personally, a number of you as horticulturalists will have been picked up by a boundary change, and this was referred to before. But there was one of the changes in the previous process. I'm going to hold up a couple of documents now. So to understand the bills that you are looking at now, and if you're looking, there is, Jarrah, you're going to talk about the rates calculator. Yep. There's a rates calculator available. You need to understand, and probably most of you do anyway, that you're looking at the net result of two things. You're looking at the net result of the revenue and financing policy that was consulted over before Christmas and into the new year. And a really big headline is that resharing across the community involved a 34.9% reduction overall to the rural sector, the non-horticultural sector, so the pastoral farming sector, if you like, a 16% increase to the residential sector, and a 27% increase to the horticultural sector. Right? So those are the big shifting of the deck chairs on the Titanic, if you want to characterise it that way. It was a zero-sum game, but there was a big redistribution about who pays the rates load. So what you are seeing now is the net effect of that, plus this, which is what you would be submitting on now, which is the 19% this year, 19.6 on top of this one, just so we're really, really clear. Thank you.
Any questions?
What's the chances of them going down after 3 years? I haven't seen it here from either before.
Not even we are saying they're going down. We're saying 9%. One of the things that's one of the bits of fine print embedded in this current one here is a set of reviews. And there are some of us councillors who believe that if we keep on doing the way that we currently operate, and if we don't look closely at our core business and how we do it and how we reassess how we might be able to achieve the same or better outcomes in completely different ways, then we'll just keep on this additive way. And this is how councils, this is how government works. New program, more costs. New program, more costs. Really, and they're not very good at getting rid of the old ones, but they're really good at coming up with new ones. Unless you go back to your fundamentals and review how you're doing that, how you're achieving the outcomes you need, you're always going to go up. And at the moment, we've only got two possible ways that I can think of to get out of the system. One is to get rescued by central government, and local government New Zealand's trying to do that. But I find it really hard to imagine this current government turning around to local government and saying, oh, we've done all this hard work and got rid of 10% of our staff and reduced our costs, and we'll give you all our savings to local government. It's just simply not going to happen. So that's one route. The other one is to look at our core business and do it differently. And that's where I'm trying to take the business from the second half of this year.
Thank you. Jeff?
Go to the next slide. One more. Finally, here we are. So this is actually really the practical part that I get a bit worked up about. Oh, there's a lot of other stuff that I get worked about, which I'll talk about later on. But so this is the rates calculator. So if we actually wanted to do a proper consultation with you as the ratepayers, we would actually put this in with your rate, your letter saying that we would like to see your submissions on what we are doing. Because all of a sudden, once people see the financial implication of what we're changing, and there's a whole lot of people that are asleep at the wheel, and that's the Predo distribution process. 20% of the fishermen catch 80% of the fish. And it's the same with whether people will submit or not. But we really should have had, with the document that came to you on your address, what your rate increase was going to be, with possibly this particular breakdown. Because then all of a sudden you would have realised what you were in for. Hopefully you all know, and that's why you're here. So it's really simple. You put in your address or your valuation number, and then you can see what you've paid before and what you're going to pay. And it's very simple to work out the percentages. So this would be, I would say, Brookfield Road, Hastings. That's a reasonably affluent area. The sections there are relatively expensive, so the rate increase is not quite as great. But we've seen, as Bryden said, we've seen changes from 25 right up to 200%. We hear a lot of 150s, which is a lot. And for us, and then that's really where I struggle is, and I'll talk about it a little bit more, we as the ratepayer, and I'm a ratepayer too, although I'm a councillor, we are really the owners of this business. Hawkesbury Regional Council belongs to us, okay? We fund it, we ought to make the decisions, that's why they come to us for submissions. Most of us doing it really tough. And so most of us will pay rates out of our overdrafts because we actually don't have a spare pot of money somewhere that we actually can take money out of and go and pay rates. If you're a friend of the bank in these days and you've got a reasonable equity, 7.5%, 8.5% is your overdraft rate, okay? If If you're not so friendly with the bank and you're right to that limit, you could be looking at 9.5%, or you haven't actually had the discussion with the bank manager and they've given you a few basis points down. So if I'm the business owner of a Hawkesbury Regional Council, why would I pay out of my overdraft at, say, 8.5% my rates, where we have 500 million plus sitting in investments? Makes no sense. I wouldn't do it, you know. If I had spare money, I wouldn't go into my overdraft. I wouldn't even have an overdraft, of course, but that's what I would do. I would take that money, but we have decided not to, because they see the business totally different. They don't see the business as being owned by the ratepayer. So that's my view on why we should have reduced debt out of the money that we had, rather than coming to us as ratepayers, okay? So Zan talked about the second half of this year. We're going to look at some of the numbers within the council. And you can see in this particular case, there's a whole lot of issues, areas where we are rated, and you can see that by colour. In this particular case, this property's gone down. If I look at mine, it's actually the other way around. One thing that has gone up in my case, which is public transport, and once again, I seem to be very negative this particular term, and I voted against increasing the area of public transport. To me, it didn't make sense. Why? And I was told, but you as a horticulturalist, some people will come to you on public transport to work for you. Well, I've never had anyone on public transport turn up in Twyford, you know. Number 265, right at the end of Twyford Road, what benefit would they have to actually having to pay rates on the basis of public transport? Makes no sense. So I'll just give you a little bit of insight. I'll talk about it a little bit later more. Maybe we just increase the rate a little bit so that our rating base, so we actually can capture a little bit more money to pay for something that's going to go up in cost. Nothing to do with the beneficiaries or the exacerbators. No. Because we can. Okay, and I'll leave it at that. So I'll really go online, and you'll at the end, Leanne can actually help you with that as well. You can go online, and you can go to the rates calculator. You put in your address and your valuation number, and it's really easy to work out the percentage that you go up or the total amount. To us, the total amount is actually more important than the percentage. And we've been told, actually, Will Foley was told by RC, look, the percentages may be really high, but the amount is actually not that great. But if you're a pensioner, you've got no way to increase your income, and electricity is going up, petrol is going up, insurance is going up, $200 or $250 is a lot of money. That actually could mean power for a month in the winter, maybe even 2 months if you actually have your blankets on, maybe 2 months. So who knows? I believe it's actually very callous for someone actually to make that sort of statement, because once again, you need to actually talk to the council, to the ratepayers, and some of us have been to drop-in sessions. I don't believe in them. I believe in this here, where we actually can have a robust discussion. You can hear from each other. And I think it's really important that we actually front up as councillors, as we have done, the four of us. Unfortunately, you don't see any staff here, and you don't see our CE here either. And we did invite them to be here as well. So it's a pity that they're not here. I would like them to speak to you, because here you can really hear what's going on. But hopefully through this medium, you talk to a lot of people, and we have got media here, and they no doubt will get the message out as well. So any questions on the rate calculator? John? Okay, good. Excellent. Yes, Troy.
So your colleague and chair is the boss of the operational side, or the CE of the operational side. Is it like, how can it not be a thing where the boss says, hey, someone needs to go to this?
I can't answer that one because the chair is actually the boss. So as a council, we've got a chair. The chair has got direct line with the CE. And the CE deals with staff. We as governors cannot deal with staff either. So that's and that's a good way of being, because otherwise you get a whole muddled system of councillors getting involved with staff and telling them what to do and what not to do, the CE. So...
yeah, I understand that. That's why I said what I just said. Like, you as a person,
yep,
you can tell someone, as an employee, get someone to go along to this.
Well, As a councillor, I haven't told Henawai or asked Henawai, who's our chair, to ask Dr. Nick Pete to come here. Okay, so I would say it would be normal process that they would turn up. James, previous CEO, used to come up to these meetings, and I've been with him at Karamu and in Havelock North, where he turned up and would answer questions. Hasn't happened this time, but it is what it is. We haven't got him here. Maybe we should ask that question. Good.
Yeah, it's unfortunate they wouldn't come, and Henawai was invited and couldn't make it and sent her apologies. But I imagine quite a few of the questions will keep going back to these councillors.
Can I just add that with this rates increase and people not being able to live on their land, which they're still expected, they've had to go into towns and things, so now they're actually double dipping on rates because they've got the rates for that and the rates for supposedly a safe place to live.
I hear you. Anna?
I've just got a question for that first graph.
Yep.
Sorry, I thought you would.
That's Anne.
No, you can answer it. That graph, in that red line, there's none of the rate increase is for flood protection. Is that right?
That's right.
So not a single cent.
Correct.
And then the other thing that I can't understand from what you're saying is why did you not even ask in the consultation if Hawke's Bay people would be interested in selling some of our assets?
So apology on my behalf is most people I hear from Twyford. So last year, I actually wasn't really much at the council. I was just at the council meetings because I was rebuilding my business. So during these discussions, I wasn't there a lot. I did ask for the paper that the council got, and it was relatively lightweight. So the question was asked, shall we divest? And I thought it was quite a lightweight paper. And on that basis, the council actually decided that it was a foregone conclusion, makes a lot of sense not to divest, but actually rate. Maybe Suzanne has got an answer for you. I can't give it to you.
So, Anna, two parts to that answer. One is that on the basis of information that staff provided, the expectations for our returns from our investment portfolio exceeded our cost of funding that. So we were planning to profit from, so this is a plan, planning to profit from that. And so the difference between our cost of funding and our returns should, if it goes to plan, reduce your rates. So that's reason one. The second reason is that there's a reasonably widespread view that this is just the first of a number of rainy days. So there's a decision to me. Actually, there's a third one. You need to take a view on just how rainy the day was and what we face in future. The third one will come back to me. It's just gone out of my head. I'll let you know on that one.
Can I just add to that?
Yep.
So I asked for a list of all of those investments, the $500 million that the regional council had. Included in that is $25 million worth of property in Wellington, including a school. And it returns, and this has been year on year, $807,000. And my math might not be that great, but I think that's around, 3%? How are you going to tell me that you're going to make, 6% on that now from those properties in Wellington?
Because those property portfolios are about to be, there's a number of them coming up for repricing very soon. I think a number of leasehold properties, so they're long-term leases that get repriced infrequently, and they're on the cusp. I believe 2025 is a number of them. And we've put a lot of effort into rejigging, and this is the third part of the answer that I was looking for, is that we've put a lot of effort and thought into making HBRIC, our investment company, more independent and more professional, and we have a well-developed plan to give that organisation responsibility for all our investments, right? So that was the third reason why we did not want to take money away from them in the short term, because we have a job for them to do. Having said that, and as I mentioned before, I think it's completely legitimate to have a view that we should take some of that investment money to pay for what we're doing now. But you can't keep on doing that forever. And as we've heard before, part of the reason we had, previous councils have done that and just dug a deeper hole because they haven't looked at the business itself.
Thank you, Sam. JB, if you want to come up.
So thanks Hawke's Bay Fruit Growers Association, Bryden and Ross for convening a meeting, and thank you councillors for being so brave to front up. Jeff, Sand, Jock and Will. No, that's great. I have to say that I'm a little disappointed that Nick Pete isn't here. I actually texted him today and said, why don't you come along, we're just going to have a bit of a chinwag about rates. And he said, oh, well, that's a political decision and it's for the councillors to manage. I actually don't think that's fair. I mean, he's part of writing it, he understands it. I think that's a cop-out. And also I'm a little bit disappointed that Hinawai, our chairman, hasn't fronted that. She knew quite a while ago this is coming, and I'm disappointed she hasn't made it. Anyway, thanks for having the meeting. I normally never pay any interest to rates, and I mean they always go up, and we all know councils spend too much, and it's a nightmare. But my CFO collared me one day in the corridor and he said, do you realise that your average rate increase is about 45% this coming year? I thought, oh, that's quite a lot. I'll have a little look into it. And on the surface of it, intuitively you think, we've had a big cyclone, we've got to fix the cyclone. That's kind of a good idea, we've got to spend a whole lot of money fixing it. And I have to say, this paper, published by Nick, is a little bit ingenious. I mean, you saw the very first slide, Zan, that you put up. It had a figure of $250 million spending on flood protection. What it didn't say is a little over 200 million of it's coming from central government, a little over 40 million is coming from a loan, and the tiny bit of rate contribution is only 0.7% into that. So I think, when I started to look at this, I thought, so we're going to have an average rate increase of 19.6. My rate increases of 45%. That we need to understand more a little bit about the figures. And my contention is that the councillors haven't really read the room. These are really tough times now. We've had a cyclone, we've got tough markets, there's a lot going on. There's a recession, we've got higher interest rates, the horns are getting pulled in. And the council has, it's not a big spend on flood protection, it's business as usual. And if you look at a lot of the reasoning, the wages have gone up, bus drivers' fees have gone up in the booklet. And I feel my first big complaint is I think the quality of spend hasn't really been addressed. And I think it's time as a community we really looked at the quality. So with a little bit of help of my friends and some staff and bits and pieces, I got some figures and we did publish them. So, but for those who haven't read them, here we go. We'll just read a few out. Full-time employees, that's always a measure of productivity, efficiency, how much a given work is done for how many people it takes. And I was staggered to see just in 9 years, we had something like 127% increase in staff, just in 9 years. It seems an enormous amount, from 182 people to 413. I'm told some of the positions weren't full and we're back to 380. But still, it's a huge increase in staff. And in this day and age of technology, you would think we could get some productivity boosts and do more with less. all of us are looking at our businesses at doing more with less and managing our numbers. Transport subsidy, 3.1 million 23-24 year, budgeted to go to $7.1 million to run empty buses around Hastings. I mean, when you think of it in context of other issues and where we're at, it just doesn't seem proportionate. The general rates collected will have gone from 3.3 million to 36.2 million in 10 years. That's a whopping nearly 1,000% increase in just 10 years. And at the same time, CPI, and it's these are published figures, is just 30%. So, and the general, so these 2024 rate increases actually exclude the plan for flood protection and sea hazard inundation. So my contention is that we really do need to look at cutting our cloth and managing it. But I think of even more concern for me is our flood protection system. I mean, we've had Cyclone Gabrielle, and my personal view is that it's just a warning that climate change is real. I don't think there's any deniers left. Back in the day, 10 years ago, there was probably a few deniers. But I think today everyone recognises we're going to get more of these events. And Peter Rakes, out of his own money, funded a study, and it was immediately after the cyclone, and some people say it's a bit brief, but it was a cursory look. He is an expert. He's from HDHV, which is a Dutch, not sure if you're like that, a Dutch company that did the flood control after Cyclone Katrina and employs lots of people and is really experienced. Anyway, his view is that what we've got, and I'll just quote from his book, he says that he's warned that the inherent weakness in our flood protection systems provide a real risk of disastrous consequences, including loss of life. Now, in Cyclone Gabrielle, the water came within a gumboot height of breaching above Roy's Hill. And overtopping is one thing, and if it overtopped, that's problematic. But breaching is a whole different issue. And my understanding is that there's stop banks breached in 34 places. And we've got a report here that says that it's wholly inadequate. My personal view is we need to get proper advice and we need to spend the money, which is the fundamental for our community, and fix our flood protection systems. And our flood protection system is not just about building higher stop banks or building stronger stop banks. It's a whole system approach, whether it's slowing down the water in the hills, whether it's creating spillways, whether it's redirecting water, whatever it is, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And I think sitting there with your investments, looking, a little bit worried because you've got 2.5%. And by the way, 2.5% is going backwards because inflation's at 4.7. Yeah? You're actually losing purchasing power. We should use our capital to do what you used to be all about, which is the catchment board, and a fundamental for our community, and build a resilient flood protection system. And Zan, in your election manifesto, you said that one of your policies was you create a 1 in 500 year flood protection system. And I completely agree with you. And I'd urge you to rigorously follow that. Sorry to say, Zan, I did look up what you said in your election thing. You also said that, let me just quote from you. Sorry to quote back your words.
No rise in general rates, is that the one you have in mind?
General rate increases capped to no more than consumer price index. Well, I think you failed by 400%. 19.6 versus 4.7 is about 400%.
You got
So-
the right to not vote for me next time.
No, but no, Zan. I just think we just have to read the room and understand where the community's at and what they're saying. We want to fix our flood. We want to spend some real money doing it, and we want to control our rates and be a little bit more constrained like the rest of the community.
Look, and as I said before, that's what we're trying to do with the reviews. What we do in this year remains to be seen based on the submission. And if that comes, and if there's enough submissions saying take some of that investment money and use it to reduce the business, because you all know, anyone that's familiar with local government knows, there is no short term in this 1 year. These are ships, these are Titanics. You can't turn the tap off in 1 year, in the same way as we shouldn't be turning the tap off Hawke's Bay tourism in 1 year.
Well, it's all tough, and these are tough decisions, and it's just a question of prioritising and really managing it. And I think whether you're running a business or whether you're involved in voting in the council, there's actually some really tough calls that you've got to make. And one of the reasons I've supported having the meeting here is to let people know. Firstly, use the rate calculator. How many people have looked up their rates? Oh, that's good. So most have, and it was that and my CFO that made me realise. And I think it's really important that everyone submits, whether they're for the rate rises or whether they want to maintain some services or they want some constrained spend. Tom.
John, you have a keen financial mind, and you know that if the council has 500 million in assets, you can't lay his hands on all of those. Most of those are tied up in a port that requires a whole special consultation process to do anything with. And so I hear you saying two different things. On the one hand, you want to make sure we have hundreds of millions of capital money available for stop bank improvement. Terrific. But you also want to use some of that pot for rate relief today. What's the balance?
Well, you heard, no. You heard one thing correct and the other thing you invented. I didn't say spend capital on reducing rates. You shouldn't spend, I completely agree with Zan, you shouldn't spend capital on expenditure items, not at all. You have to constrain your expenditure to do that. Capital has got to be spent on capital. And if you're talking about investments, the very single best risk-free investment is paying down debt. If you've got a debt of 5.3% and you're earning 2.5%, risk-free, you can pay down debt, and that'll help you. So, Tom, yes to one of your questions and no to the other. I'm completely opposed to spending capital, valuable capital, on revenue and expenditure items.
David, just taking your figures around staff, and it's really not to your question because you're not the controller, but to my mind, central government's sort of come in and inherited 14,000 extra staff and are doing something about it. Regional councils lifted it by 200, roughly, from a pretty stable area pre-2009 at 180 odd to now over 400, or thereabouts. What is the plan? Where is the productivity from that extra 200 people, and why can't I'd say your 4.6 million that you've dropped in your rates in that middle column probably was 50 people not actually being employed. Would be that saving. So I'm interested in what the plan is around the staff. You've got 5 properties that are actually retaining people, which is all additional cost. Where is the pullback on the expenditure and actually save some money?
Well, that's exactly my contention. And I can share with you, Bostock, New Zealand got hit really hard by the cyclone. You saw our onions from Mahia to Paronga, how, you know, basically at the time we'd harvested, we'd prepared all the crops, got them ready and out to sea. So we've cut back our permanent workforce, and it's amazing what you can do with less people and how the team continue to perform. And I think you'll be amazed. I suspect you could cut up to 100 people in the regional council and keep a very similar level of productivity. I know that sounds really extreme, but it is amazing when you start cutting. And the use of technology and actually implementation of technology, you can get an enormous amount done. Instead of having meetings to have meetings to have meetings, be more productive.
John, I'm looking on my field that I can feel, not the building side, but you're noticing in your sector how much in that 10 years' time, how they've put so many other constraints on it, and constraints for the regional council, I'm not making excuses for them, but are they getting the same thing going from higher government, doing work for the sake of doing work? So, yes, I do get that, but is there so many jobs in the last 10 years that have been created from a higher level that they...
I can absolutely assume that even worse than private individuals, the regulatory authorities, the regional council are getting a huge amount of impositions from central government. But equally, there's a lot of technology come to play, and there's opportunities to be way more efficient. I mean, when I see the ballooning of corporate services, I really wonder if they're being really smart and managing their business as well as possible.
So, Steve, I've asked that question quite a bit because we at times have to react on policy that comes from central government. And the question I always ask is, what is the risk of us actually not doing exactly to the letter what they ask, but actually doing something that's pragmatic? And if the risk is we're going to have more ice cream, let's do it. But I never get an answer. And they always go to the letter of the law. And I'll give you one example, dangerous dams. So all of a sudden, we now as a council have to go out on farms to check all the dams that we know of, over 5 metres height, to see if they actually are safe. Engineers have to go and check them out. That of a value of about $30,000 per dam to be checked. If they're dangerous, then they need to be remedied. So you're talking about a lot of money, okay? And I wanted to slow that whole course down because it makes no sense from my perspective. We just had a big rainy day. If those dams were dangerous, they would have been gone. But anyway, that's maybe too pragmatic. So I asked, slow the whole process down. Not willing to do it. We voted in favour of it. And now, unfortunately, our farmers, who are actually doing it really, really tough, similar to us in horticulture, they now actually have to lump it and actually have to try and find engineers that are not there. Who knows if there is a dangerous dam or a dam that actually explodes, and it's even natural resources in its path are seen as being damaged by a dangerous dam. So if an engineer thinks there's a stand of native bush and it gets ruined by this particular dam, that's a danger. So on that basis, that dam needs to be resolved. Anyway, that's me. Don't get me going. Brian.
I'll say something. Look, I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of people on the council of late, and they say we've got austerity, there's no money to spend, yet these people are still being employed. I'm just not sure why we're employing them if they're not actually able to do anything with their time that they're being paid to do. So I'd ask that question to be followed through with council.
Hey, Jock, you have it.
You've been quite kind to me, so I'll try and be kind back. On the subject of, well, and I'll go back a step. Actually, in my view, you've provided a lot of the solutions with the discussion tonight. You know, if you were to distill this down to some really simple things, what we're talking about over the next couple of years is about $17 million. That's a cumulative rate increase. Now, the subject of staff or council costs and that sort of thing has come through a lot.
So give that to us loud and clear. Say that really, really strongly. You guys need to cut your costs, you need to cut staff, or whatever you think it is. Send that through as strongly as you like. The other thing you might want to consider is that the subject of investments has come up quite a lot. Yes, there is 500 million that we've got invested, and historically that's yielded a really conservative return, let's put it that way. But, you know, any of you have got a super fund, you're probably getting around about 7% on that, so there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't get 7% on our funds. The cost of borrowing for us is 4%. So actually, it does make sense for us to invest, and because we make more, we should be making more on our investments than what the borrowing's costing us. But the two key things I'd like to suggest to you, a very simple way for you to communicate it is, cut your costs, and if you agree with this, then you might also suggest sell some stuff, some of those assets, but only a small portion of those assets. Because in the scheme of things, if we're able to get 7% out of 500 million over time, then that's a really good return. So for me, it's just those two key things. Cut your costs, sell a very small portion of the assets to get you over the hump, the rainy day scenario, and actually you don't have to do too much of either of those things to get the $17 million, which is the cumulative rate increase for the next 2 years.
And there's a comments box at the end of the submission where you can write that in, actually. Cut the costs. I mean, this current government's got a mandate to cut. You know, gone through all their departments saying, you know, get rid of staff, cut your costs. So really the council should be doing the same thing.
But John, I've heard your 7% return from your investment should be 7% return. But there's a little thing you've forgotten. It's called risk. And actually, if you pay down debt, that's 100% risk-free.
Well, no, what we're doing at the moment, though, JB, is we're guaranteeing ourselves a low return. So if you took a sort of fund management sense, we're conservative, we're way down here. But if you want to get a respectable return over time, you've got to have some growth in there. You're going to expect a bit of this along the way, and you've got to suck that up.
But John, you're a regional council. We're in business, creating wealth, creating value. We don't want you to take our money to invest. We want you to fix the stop banks, sort the flood protection, do the regulatory authority, not invest our money in the hope that you get a return so you can lower the rates. I'd like to use the money myself to create more money that I can pay my rates.
Well, you could say, that's a reasonable thing to say. You could say, we want you to sell 50% of your 500 million of assets, and we want you to fund that to provide long-term flood resilience for that. You could say that.
I am saying that.
Anna.
Thanks, John. Like John, I submitted on the switch against going from capital value from land to capital. There were 500 submissions, 90% deferred, were opposed, and of those were represented by hundreds of organisations that have hundreds of members. You've just told us to submit, and I'm happily going to submit, but how many submissions do we need to do to make you understand that that's what we want to do? Because 500 wasn't enough.
Well, but most of the submissions on the last occasion were related to people being concerned about a rate increase, the time to voice the opinion about it on.
I read all those submissions, and I sat through those submissions, and I believe there were some big submissions against the switch, not just because it was increasing somebody's rates. And then you put up those circles, those graphs, and you show us what those rate increases were back then for this one. But you never showed us what the rate increases were for people when you switched from land to capital values. But my question to you is, how many submissions? Do we need thousands? What do you want?
Well, I've just given you a suggestion now as to the things that you might want to submit on.
I asked how many submissions?
Well, it's an arbitrary answer, isn't it? There's 70,000 ratepayers.
500 wasn't enough, and you said 500 wasn't enough. I heard you say, Jock, that the silent majority supported you.
No, you did not hear me say...
You did. You said that at the council meeting.
I said we had 70,000 ratepayers and I needed to take all that input into account.
G'day everyone, this is new territory for me. Will Foley, Deputy Chair and Councillor from Central Hawke's Bay. I've sort of just been listening away to all the talk there, and I think there's two kind of key issues we've either got stuck on or not quite understanding. And if we go back to that why are my rates increasing graph, I mean, JB's kind of nailed it with all his points. Why are my rates going up? So those are the reasons Zen went through, and then those reasons going down. So 19.6% average increase, but there's all these things being pulled out of it. None of these are extra levels of service. You're getting less for paying more under this proposal. The biggest thing, deferred rates increase, which Zen touched on. But why were they deferred? There was the COVID year, but then the 2021 LTP, your rates were 15 to 20% in that range over those 3 years. The real rates were closer to 40% because of all this growth in the organisation, but we borrowed to bring the rates down to a more acceptable level, if you call 15 to 20 acceptable. So we're now paying back that debt, but the growth of the organisation hasn't been addressed here. So that's the main point. And I hear, and Dan said we're going to address it, but we actually needed to address it now because everyone's hurting. You know, everyone's hurting out there. Pensioners, we hear from especially, their income's fixed. We were out at Bayview the other night, a lot of pensioners out there. It's 25k for a couple, tax down to 20, rates and insurance, there's nothing left for them, and they've still got to pay power and food. So, you know, if JB's in business, all you guys are in business, if you actually have to cut costs, you do it now, because that's how you survive. And so that's the frustrating thing for me with council, is things just take too long. So Anna, you asked, how much of in here is the flood protection? It's none, really. So when we talk about selling assets, we've got to say, well, what for? Because there's nothing in here we should be selling assets for. And so another one of my pet hates about this is it's only 3 years, not 10. If it was a 10-year plan, you guys would probably be falling off your chairs because of all these extra things coming up. So the 250 million flood resilience program is for new schemes. So Prongahau, Whirinaki, Wairoa, and a few smaller parts of Hiratonga. None of it's for the actual existing scheme that JB's talking about, lifting stop banks, moving them out, taking more gravel out. That's all still to come. So those independent reports are coming June, July for Apatuki and Hiratonga will be the two big ones. And so no doubt there's going to be tens of millions of dollars of recommendations to come out of those. So that's when we need to have the conversation. This is the recommendation, you know, where are we going to get the funding from? Is it going to be central government? Is it going to be selling investments? And then how much does the ratepayer top up? So, yeah, so I just want to make sure we're not confusing selling assets for stuff here that's not really suitable. But back to JB's points, the organisation has grown immensely. It turned around when the Ruataniwha Dam stopped and the growth took off then. In terms of employing all these extra people, this extra cost, that 1,000% increase in general rates. From what I hear from my constituents especially is talking to Hugh's productivity point, is that all it's done is it's slowed everything down. So the same job's happening, but instead of going through one pair of hands, it's going through 3, 4 or 5. So the accountability is lost. Everyone's just passing it from one to another, slowed everything right down, and things just aren't getting done. That's what I'm hearing from my constituents. And so it's going to be pretty difficult to turn around, but yeah, that's what we have to address. And so that, and that will hopefully bring the cost down as well. But yeah, I mean, I apologise it's not presented here because
revenue and financing policy, we spent the best part of 2 years workshopping and doing that. And JB came to our hearings and spoke about shifting chairs on you-know-what. And he was kind of dead right, because this is what we needed to spend 2 years on, to right-size the organisation for the times we're in. Because we know everyone's struggling. You guys have been smashed. Your water consents, are an issue. And there's no offset for that. Everyone in town's doing it hard. Retail, sheep and beef farmers are doing it tough. No one's immune. So it's just trying to get everyone in council to realise that. Thanks.
Thanks, Will. Is there any questions for Will?
Only a comment, right? And just to say that, we've identified the CEO as, has like a normal business, relates to the chairman and that's the driver. But you guys are the directors. And you actually got to take some ownership, I think, of the problems, rather than say, yeah, we sort of agree, but, write a submission. You're our representatives. You're hearing the message pretty loud and clear. And apart from Will saying, just now that he accepts that's what we've got to be doing, I mean, if you guys don't believe that that's what we have to do, then sing out. But if you actually do believe it, then as our representatives, don't just keep on saying, write a submission. Actually start arguing and collectively coming together to change the minds and hearts of the rest of your councillors, and then tell the management what to do.
Yeah, I guess what we're saying when we say write a submission is for our colleagues that aren't on the same page as us, as some of the things you've heard tonight. We're 11 different identities around that table, and we need you guys to speak as much as we're trying to speak to them, because that's been the struggle the last couple of years.
Okay. Just one more question. Yeah.
Yeah, just one very another question. Just one of those other 11, I was told, I wasn't there, at Carroll the other day, some people were expressing similar to what we're talking about here, and their comment was just, you're going to have to put your charges up or your product price up. That's pretty disappointing to hear from a councillor.
Totally agree with that, Troy. It's not really the right answer, is it? No. Especially if you... Elma, who is an elderly lady, she came actually to talk to the... when we had the hearings regarding the land value versus capital value, and the only reason she knew that her rates were going to go up through the change, you could see that in the graphs, and she knew that her rates were going to go up, and the only choice she had was either not pay electricity or her friends, that's what they're doing now, not paying insurance. Imagine if some of us didn't pay insurance and then come through the cyclone, we would be, in buggered, I would say. Normally you don't use that word, but that's how it would be. Okay, any other comments? Yeah, Tom.
As we're returning to the core competency issue of catchment boards, we have 4 councillors here. What's your feeling about Hawke's Bay tourism being a core function of the council?
Okay, I'm going to side pass. I wasn't there at the discussion when they made the decision initially not to fund Hawke's Bay tourism. So I'm going to pass it on to my better looking colleagues.
My first comment would be I'm gutted at the way it's played out. I think around October was our first workshop, and it was presented then as a suggestion, or pretty much, the draft plan for us to start working as a starting point. And from what I understand, no discussions have been had with members of Hawke's Bay Tourism, which is just not a very good way to do business, I would have said. Getting to the decision, I mean, I could think Hawke's Bay Tourism is a great thing, but, those Bayview residents I was talking about, they're 150 to 220% increase in regional council rates. They're 100 to 150% in Napier City council rates. I've got plenty of people down in CHB, 150 to 250% rate increases. How can I decide on that, which just adds more rates on top of what they already can't afford. So that's where I'm struggling with decisions like that. It could, I'm sure it's a good thing, but I've just got to get past that point.
Thanks, Will. Jerry's going to come and just speak on behalf of him as a grower.
As a grower, and I've already made quite a few points as a councillor. It still irks me that we went from land value to capital value. 3 of us councillors here voted against it. And I first want to step back again to what Jock said about investments. We are going to make 7% plus, so therefore give us some time. I heard today on a podcast in the States where they have wind farms and they're having up to 600,000 birds in Texas alone that are actually getting chopped their heads off or their wings off through wind farms. But there's no, and that's against the law really to do that because some of these birds are protected, but the wind farm industry doesn't get taken to court. Because the reason is, oh yeah, but if we do that, we actually save the climate and therefore we'll have more birds in the future. Well, those birds who their heads are chopped off, they have got no investment in the future. They actually want to keep flying and keep their heads. I think it's the same here, Here we are as ratepayers, and Jock, I just told you, we as ratepayers are the owners of this business.
No, that's what I would do if it's my business.
Exactly. As ratepayers, we are the owners of the business. So we actually should, as John Bostock says so clearly, it's no risk, and that's the way you would do it. Instead of actually borrowing heavily, you actually reduce your debt if you got spare money. That's what I would do. But anyway, and once again, you could have 1,000, 1,500 submissions. The answer always will be, yeah, but, and I've heard it now several times, and I'm the one councillor that always says, we as a councillor are not listening to our submitters. And we haven't done it again, last time round. And I bet you bottom dollar now, we won't listen this time round either. But there's always, if it's 1,500, there's always, 65,000 ratepayers that think different and they haven't voiced their view, so therefore they must be in favour. That's what I always get to hear. But anyway.
Chief, is there anything in your constitution or the council that says this percentage of submissions we have to take?
No, there isn't. There isn't. So I've asked Cullum to actually put the last page up. Oh, not this page, that one there. So we're having public consultation now. Wednesday, 8 o'clock is the last time you put your submissions in.
8 p.m.
8 p.m, yep. Hearings, 29th and 30th. Hey, if you're game, put down that you want to be heard. That speaks volumes. Elma, the old pensioner lady, she actually didn't know she needed to speak, but she sat there and said, oh, I only came here to talk to the man. And here we all as councillors were sitting there. It was actually kind of fun. But she was actually truthful. You could hear the reason why she came and needed to come and listen to. And I thought we were actually going to listen to her, and she was the game breaker, but it wasn't. Then we have deliberations. So we may not listen to all the submissions or looking at the percentages of it. That's when we as councillors will decide, listening to you guys here now, which I think is really important, and hats off for the councillors who are here. That's really great. That's when we actually will have these discussions. And this will be live on, and once again, like Zan said, if you don't like what a certain councillor has to say or how they actually vote in this particular case, then you need to get political and make sure that councillor doesn't get back on again for that reason. And then adoption is the 26th of June. So I've got one last point to make, and it's not a popular one. The reason we as a council, and I speak for it rightly, English are too polite to be honest, Dutch are too honest to be polite. So I'm not going to be polite, okay? The reason we changed from land value to capital value was because those people with a lot of capital in their properties, they are able to afford it. So they're going to pay the rates. That was being said. And none of you guys can refute that. That was being said. You got that? That's why I'm mad. That's why I'm angry. Because that's the wrong driver. The driver should be Hawkesbury Regional Council. It's the land. Those who are benefiting and are exacerbators, they are the ones who should be paying for what we do as a Hawkesbury Regional Council. And sure enough, I don't begrudge that farmers are getting a reduction in their rates. That's immaterial, you know. That's just the way it is. And because they're doing it really tough. That's not what it's about. It's the concept, what is fair and reasonable. And it's not fair and reasonable, what we have decided, okay? So that's how I see it. So hopefully our councillors, they've listened to you guys here. Bryden will wrap up and give some few points. And then we'll hopefully, on the 18th of June, we'll make some sense. Thank you.
I've just got one question for the four councillors. When the moving to capital rating base was discussed, did management discuss the cumulative effect of the rate rise on top? So the rates were clearly going to move strongly up, and the net effect for those who are getting the increased rate?
Okay. During that discussion, we got Excel spreadsheets, and yellow was lower socioeconomic areas, green was middle, and another colour, blue, was for those who are in Havelock North and up the hill in Napier. And so we only could see what the change was from land value to capital value. That's all we could see. And while we were doing the deliberations then, the yellow ones really for about 3 councillors, which would have made the difference whether it would have gone through or not. They looked at the yellow area, which is the lower socio-economic area, and they could see that on those particular spreadsheets that actually they were going to be marginally impacted or have a reduction. So those 3 councillors actually spoke in the deliberations and said, on that basis, I'm actually going to vote for this because the poor are not actually going to be affected by this. But I since have gone to Diaz Drive and I've gone to Kiwi Street, the 2 poorest streets in Flaxmere and Camberley. And when the land value, which virtually all the land value is below $150,000, they're getting a 31 to 45% increase. Wow. These are the poor people. And now the mantra changes. Oh yeah, but Jeff, in those places, not a lot of people actually own those houses. They're renters. But initially we made the decision on those poor people. We can't actually have them affect, and they're getting sort of the REIT numbers, so they're actually not getting a big increase, so we can vote for it now. And now all of a sudden, we actually listening to them, they're saying that actually those people are most renters. So it's actually landlords who are actually getting those increases. And that's how I listen to it. So from being user pay, as in beneficiaries and exacerbators, that's how we normally set our rates. It's now gone political. And you can hear it in the way I've spoken to you about that and the way I've explained it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We're coming to the end. Just before we wrap up, we're just going to invite Leanne Roberts to come up from Hawke NZ, just to give us a kind of a high-level brief on just where we are within the water space.
Kia ora tātou. Sorry, I'm incredibly short compared to everyone in this room. So I'll just take this down. So I'm a Senior Environmental Policy Advisor in Michelle Sands' team at Horticulture New Zealand. I actually only live in Fielding, so I'm not very far away, always more than happy to come across when I can. Have been a grower, am a grower, ran my family's business in Marlborough for 10 years and have a background in policy. So I love working at Hawke NZ and I love working for growers. I work very closely with Charlotte Drury, who's one of our local planner consultants. So Charlotte generally does a lot of the on-the-ground stuff here, very skilled with working with our council and the local rules, and I help her, and hopefully you'll start to see more of me now the dust has settled from the cyclone. So I just thought I'd give you a very brief update about what's going on both in the national space, because it's likely to have some sort of impact here, and just very briefly touch on what's going on in this region. So as you all know, there's a lot going on with the Resource Management Act reform. So a whole lot of bills repealed last year. We have been very busy with a plethora of consents. Hawke NZ has had, in some cases, 4 days to submit information back to ministers. We've been working very hard, so we're starting to see the first phase of changes coming through. So this is that proposed changes in the first RMA bill. We've put a submission in. It is on our website. That's just an interim band-aid, if you like. The second bill, which will be more substantive, I'm hoping when I come to you guys later in the year, you'll have some really good thoughts and feedback for me. That's going to be the one where there's going to be a lot of changes around freshwater, things like that as well. And that'll be one where we're really wanting to get some good information from our growers, make sure that we get your views across. I have a document that I've sent through to Callum, and I've said that it's, more than happy for that to be shared. Please come back to me if you have any questions or anything else at all on those things. So just with Hawke's Bay Regional Council, just briefly, tank mediations were last week, so there's nothing really that's come out yet. We've just had the mediations, but what I can say is it looks likely that it will go to Environment Court, and Hawke NZ will be going there with that. So we will keep you in the loop as to when things can be discussed and decisions have been made. The water allocation letters that you all received around Christmas and earlier this year from Hawke's Bay Regional Council, we have had a discussion with Nick Peat. According to Hawke's Bay Regional Council, they were viewed as a conversation starter. So we have expressed concern that that's a pretty poor way to start a conversation, and perhaps work through closely with growers, closely with ourselves to help better understand rather than shocking you into replying. If you have a letter and you are really concerned and you haven't done anything about it, please talk to Charlotte or reach out to me, and I can link you in with Charlotte Drury. She is working really closely on that, and it's really important that you have that support here. Also with the Kotahi plan, there's been a bit of a reset with the cyclone, early extension date. The main thing you need to know is that used to be an all-in-one plan. They would do a regional policy statement, which is the nice strategic direction, and then the plan that sits underneath it, and they'd do it all at once. Hawke's Bay Regional Council is going to split it. So they'll do the regional policy statement first, and then they'll create a plan that fits underneath that. The regional policy statement is the hows, the whys, the big picture. That's where you want to get your voice reflected. That's where you want to see yourself. I'm going to the technical advisory group sessions along with Charlotte and NZ Apple and Pears. Hawke's Bay Fruit Growers are there as well. I promise I'm not spamming you, but I will be sending out emails quite directly and through Callum. When they have opportunities to submit, we can hopefully work together and have some key messages. And what we have found in other regions like Otago that have been through this process, your voice going through those regions is really important. It makes sure that you can see yourself in that regional policy statement, which hopefully means that the plan that sits underneath it gets you what you need to do, what you've got to do. And just briefly on that, we're going to have a Hawke's Bay Water Strategic Planning session. So Michelle Sands, my boss, will come across. It's going to be a high-level session. It'll be on May the 30th, which is a Thursday. A strategic approach, looking at our key messages, looking at who does what. So where does Hawke NZ work? Where does Hawke's Bay Fruit Growers work? Where does NZ Appy work? And making sure that we all have our messages right, that we're all working together and more cohesively. This extension gives us the chance to be a lot more planned and strategic in how we bring those messages and make sure that we get what we need listened to. So thank you very much. If anyone had any questions, I will be up the back with my laptop and I can talk you through either the rates calculator, if any of you haven't seen it, but more importantly, the submission, and show you how easy it is to work through that.
Look, I mean, probably just on the basis of, obviously, Hawke NZ's, one of its key work programs this year is going to be water storage, and so obviously they're very interested to see that, water being the enabler is in sort of how we see it on the board level there. Obviously, with my own other hat on, obviously we're looking at water storage. We've submitted on the fast track bill and have made an application to be involved in that process. And again, part of the plan there with the Toki Water Security is to actually bring water down into the Heretaunga Plains. So again, the strategic conversations that we potentially can have actually does start to provide a solution coming into the Heretaunga Plains, which then might take some pressure off some of the letters that you've been receiving. So, look, that's part of our strategy going forward, and potentially using a trust to cite those consents, and so that it's got a very high level purpose document for the community to see. But look forward to the meeting on the 30th.
Any quick questions on the water?
Not on the water, sorry. This is the council on submissions and the technical situation around same text arriving for multiple submissions. I've heard that they're not counted as more than one, which is problematic if 500 doesn't get us over the line and 65,000 people aren't actually silent voting, they're just punch drunk and can't be bothered. Is there a policy around same text, multiple submissions with the council? If you don't know, can you find out and get that to us?
I'm a first timer, but my understanding is it counted as individual submission.
On what basis do you make that? Because I've heard otherwise. Not people from the proper source, but, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if someone could come back to us and...
I will ask the question, making sure that, because you have people that have similar views, and even if it's copy and paste, they still go through the exercise, and if they agree to that submission, that should be standing as far as I can see. But I'll ask the question, how they deal with those particular submissions.
Because if an organisation that represents 500 people gets one submission, and that's counted as one of the 500, it's kind of a flawed scenario.
Troy, I'd say that submissions on behalf, coming from interest groups carry the weight of the standing of that group. So something from Hawke's Bay Fruit Growers has got a level of standing and respect and attention that goes beyond just being a single number. The other thing is for individuals, if people who speak from their heart about how stuff impacts on them, whether it's face-to-face with council or on a piece of paper, that carries much more weight than a rote, than just filling out someone else and using someone else's words. So if you can just take a few minutes, even if it is a stock response, add your own bit of colour to it, add your own story, it's much more powerful.
We've just been told that there's no policy around how this all gets worked out. At the end of the day, it's just a bunch of councillors sitting around saying, I think this, and another one says, I think that, and then we get 500 submissions and 90% said that's what we think, and this gets ignored.
It's more complicated than that, and the weight of the messages matter, and the words that you give us an opportunity to make the points that we want to make. So don't be put off, but give it your own flavour.
Yeah, no, I'm sure none of us here will be put off.
That's good advice, though. So go, use strong words in the comments on your submission. Strong words. So we're just about at the end, but hey, thanks to Leanne and Hugh just for the update on water. And we can't finish off, one more little thing, but I can't finish off without saying that, put my director's hat on for Hawke NZ, the levy vote for Hawke NZ is open now. And Hawke NZ do a hell of a lot of work that's unseen. A lot of work in the water space, a lot of work that's unseen. So they deserve the big tick. The levy vote's out, so I encourage you to get in there and vote yes for that. Absolutely get into those submissions, make submissions, go to the back if you're not sure how it works. Leanne will show you. And we've got one minute with Brian. Wants to just share something about telephone network.
What I was going to say, who is in favour of raising rates? Put your hand up. No hands up, okay? Who is not going to submit? Put your hand up. So you're all going to submit. Fair? Okay, thank you. That's all I can ask you. Deal.
Thank you. Just wanted to take a moment. Welcome to those of you who are not Twyford residents to our Twyford Hall and to Twyford. I've been on a bit of a crusade over the last couple of years on cell phone coverage. We have really poor coverage in Twyford. It means we drop out regularly. And I'm just trying to engage whether the rest of you guys, businesses, are impacted on a daily or weekly basis by your cell phone coverage being dropped out. So I've been talking to the politicians, I've been talking to Spark. They tell me there's some more towers coming in, but I can't hold one conversation, usually without it dropping out at least once or twice. So could I just ask everyone who has at least once a week a cell phone drop out while they're doing business? Okay, so and how many would be on a daily basis? Okay, so nearly 30% of the people on a daily basis would have a business call drop out. It's just part of when I talk about Twyford, everyone just assumes that one tower is going to fix the problem. They tell me they haven't got the resources, they've got business constraints, despite the fact that they made an $830-odd million profit last year, that Spark alone. So anyhow, thank you for that, and thank you for the moment.
No problem. Hey, just thank you to the councillors for coming and giving your time. It's really appreciated. Thank you for JB and Hugh and Leanne that came and spoke. And the Hawke's Bay Fruit Growers will put an email out tomorrow just reminding all the growers and through the HAG, the Horticultural Advisory Group, for growers to get in and make a submission by Wednesday, 8 o'clock. And also the 30th of May, Thursday the 30th of May, Michelle Sands is coming down from Hawke NZ to give more of a strategic framework of the water consent, the water permit, etc., in Hawke's Bay. So come to that meeting. Hawke NZ will advertise that. It's 2 weeks on Thursday, the 30th of May. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Very good.